Uber Eats, probably behind the scenes, was snickering at how dumb McDonald's was. You don't need to necessarily buy the platform outright, but how can you get a significant stake in it and help it win? It's very hard to mess it up. They have the tech. All the biggest players just bought it. They all adopt it. I mean, what are you going to do? I was just presenting at the NAW National Association of Wholesaler, their Executive Summit. B2B distribution has a lot of opportunity. It's a $6 trillion industry. I think it's actually bigger. It's arguably the biggest industry in the United States economy. Healthcare is $3 trillion. Consumer retail is like $2.5. It's massive. So anyway, one of my messages was, don't be like McDonald's. And you can see here these different options. Invest, partner, JV, roll up, acquisition. You know, that definitely acquisitions on the far right. With Walmart buying Jet and then Flipkart. But the message here is, if you're a large traditional business, you have a lot of advantages. How are you taking advantage of an inevitable platform future and using your intrinsic strategic assets to give you a stake in the platform future? Because in many of these industries, the platform future is actually pretty clear. You can kind of see where it's going. B2B distribution is probably one of the clearest. It doesn't take a scientist or a genius to say that there's going to be marketplaces in B2B distribution. Look at Amazon Business. It's a $15 billion GMV business projected to quintuple in the next 4 years. I think it's going to be probably between $75 to $100 billion in GMV by 2023. It's a marketplace. We've seen the marketplace story for however 20 plus years now in B2C. Not a big leap to say there's going to be marketplaces in B2B. Anyway, the McDonald's story is that McDonald's had an exclusive deal with Uber Eats for over 2 years to exclusively use Uber Eats as their food delivery platform. They didn't get any economics. They didn't get any equity in Uber Eats for this deal. They got some preferential pricing treatment. They didn't even get like a non-compete, like we're not going to list other competitors to you, McDonald's, you know, for a certain amount of time. No, none of that. They needed to figure out delivery. They were way behind on delivery. So they partnered with one player, went all in with Uber Eats. Uber Eats, probably behind the scenes, was snickering at how dumb McDonald's was. There was plenty of articles that said that Uber Eats actually built their entire international business on the backs of McDonald's. And McDonald's accounted for over 10% of the supply on Uber Eats internationally. I mean, when you talk about solving for the chicken and egg problem, and that's what these intrinsic assets of these traditional businesses do, they solve for scale and demand and supply, right? I mean, I have McDonald's supply internationally in the bag, only on Uber Eats. And by the way, remember that internationally, the brand of McDonald's, I would argue, might actually be stronger than in the US. It's not as inexpensive as an option, right? In many of these emerging markets, it's actually kind of like a premium restaurant, right? Because they have really good quality standards and safety and health rules that they prescribe to. And so, you know, it can actually be more of a premium establishment than a fast food, more economical option than it is in more mature economies like the US. It's a big deal. And McDonald's didn't get anything material out of this. Now McDonald's works with all the delivery platforms, or certainly more than just Uber Eats. And what do they have to show for it? Nothing. Meanwhile, what does Uber Eats has to show for it? They're the biggest food delivery platform in the United States and huge internationally. So there's other examples on here, like Symphony and Zelle. The banks are really good at this, about doing these big JVs and then buying a company and having it be a platform. So it had all of the payment platform infrastructure, pipes, wasn't a platform though. And then like 20 of the biggest banks in the US teamed up, bought it, turned it into this thing called Zelle. Now Zelle does more volume than Venmo. So it's pretty successful. Actually did more volume than Venmo in like 2 years. Symphony is a messaging and chat communication platform for traders, because it was that the Bloomberg reporters were spying on the trade activity of people using the Bloomberg terminal, Big no-no. Banks did not take that too kindly. Created a JV, 20 plus banks, bought this company called Symphony. Now that's the tool, the communication collaboration tool platform that all their traders are using. For Zelle, I think they now have over 50 banking partners and have vastly now eclipsed the volume of Venmo. These are great partner JV examples. You create a JV, you buy a company. It's almost a guaranteed win. I mean, it's very hard to mess it up. They have the tech. All the biggest players just bought it. They all adopt it. I mean, what are you going to do? Lose, actually. That's what you're going to do. So, we've talked about Walmart. We've talked about Foot Locker. Naspers and SoftBank, they were not anywhere near in the business. They weren't even in China. Maybe SoftBank was a little bit, but SoftBank is a bank. They invested in this small company you may not know of called Alibaba, owned over 30% of it for, I don't know, small investment, tens of millions of dollars, made billions and billions and billions of dollars. And that's how they've been able to fund the Vision Fund and all of these other tech and platform investments that we've been covering. Naspers, same thing. It's a media company out of South Africa. Put like $30 million into another small company called Tencent. And I think at one point almost owned about 40% of Tencent. Crazy. They have now gone on to go and buy other platform marketplaces. They have a division called OLX. Think of it as like a bunch of Craigslist internationally. They've like rolled up a bunch of like Craigslist kind of shopping, kind of like Marketplace 1.0 type Craigslist businesses. And they've made a bunch of other digital and tech investments as well with the funds that they've gotten from these very early stage investments. These were honestly just straight investments. This is much harder to replicate. The partner JV model, Foot Locker put $100 million into GOAT, a sneaker marketplace. This isn't just an investment. This is a strategic partnership. Foot Locker's on the board of GOAT. They are helping GOAT secure exclusive inventory from manufacturers. So Foot Locker has a lot of leverage with manufacturers. How can you get exclusive inventory to be sold first on GOAT? That's one thing. How can you help GOAT solve for demand? How can you help them get, now they're putting some consignment sneakers into Foot Locker stores. And I think eventually probably figure out how to put them online. So how can you help GOAT solve for demand and supply? And Foot Locker can do that in a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways to solve for this. You don't need to necessarily buy the platform outright, but how can you get a significant stake in it and help it win? It's also a pretty good option if it's inevitable that you're going to be playing in a platform future. Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.